Hello everyone, I would like to share what I've learned from my React course while building this project, especially what components are, what the hooks and procs are, and how they work. If my understanding are wrong, please comment below. Before we start writing this project, let's take a look at what that project is. This project is an expense tracker project. Let me show you how that project works. So 2022, we have no expense form. 2021, we got few expenses. And 2020, only one toilet paper expense. And 2019, there's no expense. If user add new expense, let's 12.99 like this, and May 2022 6 add new expense. So 2002, let's see. So let's have a look. 2022, you will see one new expenses added. So let's say cap on cap y99. Let's say any date. So add new expense. So you will say another expense. That's all about the project. Then I go to open my Visual Studio Code. I have file already created, so I can trace go with this here and expense tracker, or other ways you can directly pull inside. That's the other way I can do. So I deleted the file, I don't need it, I clean another file. I go to explain something about this. So we imported React from the React third-party library, which is one of the dependency from here. React and React. The difference between React and React is that React is a JavaScript library for building user interface. What will we create and there to show up on the web page or web app, React need to communicate with the DOM. So DOM stands for Document Object Model. And here, so we imported index.css for styling purpose. So we imported index.css to styling. React package is exporting React objects. We are importing React objects into the index.js to call a method or create root methods. This is the main entry point. It tells the React where the React application, this user interface you build with the React should be placed on the web page. I go to open terminal, command J, npm start to open the browser. You will see this this will show up on here. So this is a single HTML file loaded by the browser here. This is a div with the ID or root. We want to attach and ingest our React driven user interface. So you will see this div we place in here. This is the main root to render browser. This is the main parent. This is the main place React application is rendered to. That's why we choose a root ID here. So what is this? This is our parent component, main component to render. So that's why we imported app from the app.js component. We can omit this JS. We can omit it. We don't need to put JS. This is the app component. Yeah, there's this we got function. We exported the app component and we imported and to render this app. So we imported app from app component. This is the main components to render. This is our parent component. So let's have a look at this app.js file. So what this app.js file is doing, we got function name app starting with uppercase character and we return something. This is not something you regularly see. So we got HTML code inside the JavaScript file, but it's also not valid JavaScript code. This is a feature called JSX. This is special sentence invented introduced by React team. So what is a JSX? JSX stands for JavaScript XML. So JSX allows us to write HTML and React. So JSX make it easier to write and add HTML and React. So React's all about the components. If you look at this complete project, so we got bunch of component. So a form have a one component, they have a different components, Java have their own components, and the expand have their own component. Therefore, I go to create our own first component to hold all different files. So we could edit in here, but it's considered good and best practice to put new components at the new files. We have one file per component. That's why I go to source folder to create a component folder to keep all new components. So this is a folder, this is a file. So I click here and components. I got component folder. I go to create another file. So name it and expand item js. So you can again you can name it whatever you want. So if you but it's common conventions. First character is uppercase character, and if you add another words, and the second words first character is uppercase letter. Now I will create another file for styling purpose. X item dot css, because this is for styling purpose. So I created this function. This function name is it's up to you. You can name whatever you want. And we export it as a default. This file, this function as a default. This one modern way, it's up to you. If you want to remove, you can remove, but I just keep it. This one's for styling purpose. So this file we need to import to for style, but at the moment it's empty. I will create later. This one will appear on the screen. That's what we create. This is a HTML code, GSS code to appear on the screen, and then we have to import this one and the app.js like this. That's what we have to import first, and components, and this one is a file exit. This file exit and the component. So we have to go up the component and go down like this. That's why we first go to component, and it's again this is up to you. You want to keep it or you remove it. It's up to you. So and then we have to put in here. Another way, it's a common way people do it. If nothing in there, we can do like that, like this. This is the same. This one's appear on the screen as well. You will see this expand item and this boot. Let's get started piano again, because CSS is empty. That's why it's a style does not apply yet. So I restructure this to apply this style. I'm gonna explain that something about this. This we are if you return HTML, this is not really HTML. This is a JSX code. Only they allow one root to return. That's why we wrap to become one root. So we wrap with the div and wrap it with a bracket as well. And to apply the class styling purpose, so we put the class name. Class name is and the React JSX, so we have to use it. This is no JavaScript. That's why we can't use only class. We have to use class name, and you can give it any name you want, but this name must be matched with the style label. So this expand item, so this expand item, another one expand description, so it's a dot expand item description. That's the one we created. It's appear on screen like this. We can do another way is dynamically rather than hard coding. So we store the variable like this, and then we change the we just point it here and expand it. I just copy it and paste it there and here title and here amount. But we can put the date like this. It doesn't work. So let's say to ISO strn is a string. Let's save it. So it's another way, and that's appear differently. So like this. So that's an alternative way that we can do. So how to parse the data using the props? So let's say you have an app component, you have a go item defined in which will a string of finish. So let's say you got course go item which has a list of items where the go item should be output, but the problem is the go item is live in the app component, not the go item. But that's why we can't send directly to there. That's why we utilize concept called props. These props. So we have to use attribute first. We have to add the attributes to send go item like this, and use it with the props to send like this. This is the way we have to send data like this. So using prop concept, how I share my data between the component. I'm gonna show you. We create fake data. I'm gonna share with the app to item. So we got this data. I want to share this data to the experience. As I mentioned earlier, prop concept. First, we need to add the attribute. This name is up to you. You can name whatever you want, but this name must be the same. Like this is Ray, and this name must be the same with this because we posit this data. So this one and this one must be the same, but this name you can name whatever you want. This one is this is a object, array of object. So the array starts with a 0. So this data is a 0 and the start 0 and a 1, 2, 3. That's why we pass data 1, 0, 1, 2, 3 like this. And then prop concept, we have to pass the data here. So like we have to accept the props, so we have to use props. You can name whatever you want this name. So and we have to pass the date, yeah, pass the title. This name must be the same with the say you give it. You can name it whatever you want. If you name, for example, you name and name. If you name it, so you it's name you. For example, you name. So this name you have to use and here name. So because you name this, you pass the data. So that's we pass data and it's output coming like that. So I change it back. This is title. Title. There's app components. This is title. Title. Yeah. So that's the ways we pass the data from between the component. This data we receive from external component. So that's the way we pass the data with the prop. So let's work it with the day. This is a human readable. So I want to have a calendar like look. How do we do that? So I create like this. I create the month, date, years variable. and we collect data from the this app from here. Yeah, this is date. So we collect the date and call a local string method and pass these two argument. So this is a language, English and US, UK, or you can use whatever you want. This is a month, loan. This is a loan. So if you want to use, you can use should. This is a day, so we collect the date data and call the local string methods. Pass this is language, US or UK, whatever you want. So month, so 2 digits. These 2 digits. This is years. Collect the data. So this is a Bayesian method. Get 3 years, and we just point it here, day and date year, and then we get this result. So I want to spread this date to new component, but I think it could be treated as a different component, and here it's nice and cleaner. So what I'm going to do, I want to cut out this one and this one to move to the new component. So now I create the expand these components, and I cut out this one and this one from the expand item and place it here, where to accept the purpose to pass the data, and then I have to output to here like this. Let me explain you about this this date. This date, when you pass the data with the props, so they will create the attribute. This date and this date are different. This day we pass this attribute we pass to the date in here. This date we pass from here. This date we create attribute. This date, so that's why I'm a little bit confusing. This date and this date and then this date are different. Let me show you what I said. Let's change the date name. Yeah, this one. And here says let me change like this. So save it, and I need to save it in here. So this one, this is the same. So it's coming at the same. So these data actually come from this name. This one come from here. So this day must be matched with this date. Yeah, this is the attribute we created. This you can name whatever you want. This one as well, you can name whatever you want. That's what we named it. This is attributes. These attributes, and we have to pass in here. So I change it back now. You will see it. This is all lost because we need to change this one as well. So date. You see it. Yeah, it's coming back. I created the expand date CSS component and I put it here, and I given the class names here, and the result here. So I create another components, expand component again to spread up these data from an app.js. Output here, and I create a new attribute and pass it to the here, and another CSS style it. I got result like this. I want to show you something. We got all different box. Yeah, each ones have the border radius and box shadow. It's hardly to see in here. For that, we have to create an expand item. We got box shadow and border radius, and another one as well. So expand CSS, border radius, box shadow. There's a principle called to avoid code repeating. That's why to follow this principle, what we're gonna do, I wanna put this all box shadow and border radius one CSS components to apply all of them. So what I did, I create calc CSS component and I place a border radius border box from expand CSS and expand item. I put one component and I imported to the class.js. I give a name, a class name is car. It's me, it's apply the car JS automatically, and I wrap it this card and there. So it's me, this CSS automatically apply. But you see, actually, this I lost everything. Actually, this does not work like that. So what I'm going to do now, I set the children props here. Children is a reserved name, but I didn't set children props in here. So the value of this special children process will always be content of between the opening and closing tag of the custom component. In this case, the content between the opening and closing tag of the card will be available on the inside of the prop children inside of that card. So now we got all data back, but style is still broken because the expand item have no longer border radius as a box shadow. So I have to reset about this. That's why I create a new variable classes. So card class, this from here, card class space. So process class name. Anything will receive class name from the outside added to that string. So and I just pointed a variable in here and I wrap it this expand with the card as well for that corner. So now everything is back to normal. So as you see, I reorganize the component to be separate. Before you will see all components are one component folder. So that's why I create sub component folders to spread up to nice and clear. So you will see there's a UI, there's subfolder. The expand is the expand folder. The expand item is an expand item. So and I have to change in here. So this one's okay. So this one, if I import the expand date, I have to go one step and I go the expand date and the expand date. So that's why I go one step out. So go to expand date, expand I have to change. If I wanna go to import the UI, so expand, so I have to go step out one step, this one step out and go to UI and UI card, etc. I did it the same like this here. So you have to step out and everything I reorganize it nice and clear. So you see it is all separate folders. And I change the arrow key function as well. So it's up to you, it's same. This is the arrow key function. I change all of them. So because I prefer arrow key. So and here as well, you can use whatever you want. For now, this are doing nothing. It's not functioning. So for example, if I click the button, title change, price change. So how do we do that? That's all we need to learn stay hook for functioning. So I add this temporary button for demo purpose. I will remove later. So if I click this button, this title will change. This button title will change. So how are we gonna do that? I add the awareness prop. It's called on clicks. There's a lot of different awareness props. So on change, on clicks, etc. Starting with the on, and I set the value. This value is from here. So this I create function. This is the whole function you can create here, but it will be lot of code. So it's better to keep it separate, but still doing nothing. It's not functioning, not yet doing nothing. So next step, what I'm gonna do. So what I did here is I imported a function which is called useState from the React library. So within the curly braces, this useState function allows us to define value as a state where changes to this value should reflect and the component function be called again. So how do we use this use state function? It is a simple. Inside our component function, and here, not in here, not in here, not outside the component function. So this and here we call the state use state. Initial as a default state value is like this. So we need to set initial value. So and returns like a array structure like this. These names you can choose or any name of your choice. So if you follow conventions, so you have to give the first element like this, and later and use the set and the first element. Yeah, this first elements and at the point to manage that value. Second element is a function which we can call later to set a new value. So that's why I call this state in here to update new value. So I just pass as an argument. That's why we set the value here. So I have to change in the title. Set title because we set the initial state. So it's like a variable. So we pass it here and save it. So refresh it. So change. You see everything is updated. It's working. So as you can see, I created a user input form. First, I created a new expand component and another two components, expand form and a new expand. So I created this expand form and new expand and rendered in here. So I import expand form here. I created a form. This is from this label for this and input this input type a test. So amount is as a number. This is just a default HTML attribute for input element. So and here date, I set the date. This will automatically give us a date picker. I also set minimum and maximum date. I also add a button to the submit form. Type as submit. So if I press the button, form will be submitted. I also render a new expand here. For I create form, I render in here as I expand form. So this new expand render in here. Together user input, I simply want to get the value when the user enter and store that somewhere. So to do that, for a start, we need to add a listener to listen for every key stored. So which event listener you want to listen? There's a bunch of event listener. So I want to listen on change event listener because it is skewed when the user change select the option. So that's why I choose on change, and I created functions and appointed here. In JavaScript without React, if you would add the event listener to some element in vanilla JavaScript like this, so you will listen, let's say click event. So in the function you pass as a second argument, which by the way is basically the function you pass as a values to the props. There you automatically get event object. So this is a default JavaScript behavior, and we get this default event object here as well. So now I use state again to create and to store the value. So initial value is as empty string, and in the event objects, and I'm interested in a value. Events and a bunch of data, so I target as the value. So I have to go to an event target value, store in data and update. I will do that like this. So we got three different title, amount and days. So we create three different functions, and I put it in here. So title to here, amount here, amount change handler, and date check handler like this. I created another submit handlers to point it here. If we click the button, form will be submitted. So that's why I create another submit handler here. So you see this event, that's event default, prevent default. This is as a part of default browser behavior. If you do click the button, the page will reload because the browser actually send the request whenever form is submitted to the server. That's not what we want here. Instead, we want to handle this for some machine with a JavaScript and manually collect and convert data. So we need to prevent this default behavior. That's why we prevent this default behavior. And we combine all the data. So we point in here for all the data. And this is, you can name whatever you want. There's a new date. So if we test it, so you see this data has been stored. So how do we clear this data after some deform? So to clear the data after form submitted, so I added value attributes and pointed here. So we just to listen to the changes, we can also pass the new value back. This is called two-way binding. So we call set enter title, amount and date, and set this back to the empty string. So if we test it, so you can see we restore and empty the data. So we learned before how to pass data parent to child, up to down. Yeah, now we go to learn child to parent, down to up. So we collect the data from the user through the form, and we will to pass this data to the new experience and up to parent. So first we got data, expand data. Yeah, we got expand data. We go to pass the new expand. So we create functions or expand data handler. You can give any name you want. So we use the pros to pass the data. We pull out all the expand data to create new data. So using the separate operator, and I give an ID, met random random ID to convert it to string, and we ported these functions to here to create new attributes. So this attribute names you can give any name you want. This one as well. So and we pass this one to use props to the form. So props to or on save data. So we pass it this data and we execute it. So the expand data here. If we test it here, refresh. So a book 199. If you edit, so check it, we got this data. So there's a new expand data like 11, new expand like 11. We collected the data from the form, pass it to a new expand. I'm doing the same as I pass to data from expand form to new expand. So now I pass the data new expand to app.js. So I create new function at expand handler. You can give any name you want. So accept the props to, at the moment it's a console log, and I pass or imported this value to here to just point it, and I create new attribute app expense, and I'll pass this name using props to the should be the same name, the same name we give it from here to here, and then I forwarded this data here. So expand data. If we try, see so line 29 FJS we pass. So it's 2930 we pass data, new ID generated, so we got data here. Now I created expand filter components to control the expand filter, and I render and here. So we created expand filter control component. Basically, whenever you use two-way binding, so here we are controlling our all custom component. So what does that mean? It means that value which is used and the component is passed on to a parent component and the receive through props received from the parent component. So both currently set value and of function, hence the selected value is not part of the expand filter component. So expand filter is really just a component that presents the UI. So real logic resides in the parent component. That's why expand filter component is a control component. Technically, expand filter is not controlling itself. It is controlled by the parent component. This expand item component does not do anything with the state. So this is just for demo purposes. So that's why I'm gonna remove this, and this one I don't need it. So I'm now gonna remove this one as well. Now, form, and I'm gonna put it back here. PS. This component is a stateless component. This is just output the data. This list is static and not dynamic at all at the moment. For example, if we filter here, it does not affect the list at all. So, and also if we add a new item here, yeah, it's not added to the list. Therefore, what are we going to do here? An expand component, we are currently rendering our list of expenses by individually adding this expand element. That's not dynamic at all. And most web application, we don't know how many items we want to render. Therefore, we want to render these expenses and expand component. Therefore, faster to pass this expand down via prop, which already doing. We are passing this item prop, which point at these expenses, and expense component. We got our list of expenses, but we are not currently using that. So that's what we want to change. So we create like this. So we need to open it and close the curly braces because we want to execute dynamic expression and JS code. So, and to reach out our array or expand data, we need to pass with the props and item from here. So pass like this, and now we can use built-in array method, which is math method. So what this math method does, it create a new array based on another array that basically transform every element in that original array. So using that math method, math take a function as an argument. That function is good for every element in the array. So here we got our expense, for example, and the function body. We have to return JS element into which we want to map this expense. So we pass this expense as a prop to the title, amount, and date. So we got attributes. You can give it any name or your choice, title, amount, or date. So we don't need this one anymore. So we remove it and save it. So if we refresh, you can see like before, inspect. So you will see this warning, but ignore this at the moment. We will fix later. So how we go to update this expense array whenever new expense is be added? If we go to app.js, we got this expenses array, and we also have add expense handler function, which is trigger whenever new expense is added. So we even receive this expense as a parameter here. Therefore, I go to import. You stay here from the React, and I will extract this array out of this component function. I will store it here, so we can register some state here. As I said before, I imported useState from the React, and I extracted this array out of this, and I store here. I change the name. You can give any name you want. So I call useState and pass it the dummy expenses, and we restructure again, and then we call set expenses to set up our expense arrays to a new array, which include this new expense. If you update your state depending on your previous state, we can use this special function form. It will be passed a function as an argument to this updated function. This function will automatically receive the latest state snapshot. So we will return our new array. So we add this expense, which are getting as a parameter here, and I add previous expense with that spread operator to copy the data. Now with that, we add our new expense. Now we are using this our expense state here. So if we test it, refresh, test it in book. So as you can see, it's working. So as you can see, we got key warning. So what I'm going to do, I will add the key. So key explain. I will use key ID as a key, because you can use any primitive value as a unique identifier, because ID is if you look at the data, so you will see ID everywhere. So I will use ID as a key. So and save it, refresh, test again. So you can see we have no longer a key warning. As you can see, our filter here is not working. So let me implement this. What I did, I create a new function called filter expenses. This is a prop item, which is all expenses. We call filter method. This filter method return brand new array. It does not add to the original, and we pass it functions to it, and we return true or false based on some condition. To be precise, we want to check the given expense if the date does basically have the years which match with our filter years. So we call get full years, so it actually gives us a full year. Keep in mind, this filter years is string. On the other hand, is a date object. So we need to call the string method on that to convert the string and compare to the filter years. So now this expression is returned true. Keep the years true and the date is the same year as the selected filter, and return false otherwise. So we just need to render this one here. That's it, and save it. I refresh it. As you can see,
our filter is working. But we can actually select values where we have no data and we want to show an appropriate message. For that, what I'm going to do now, what I did, I created explain list component. This component, if explain list $len equal to 0, it means uh, no explain found will return this message. Otherwise, we return the explain item. And we imported explain here because we render here, and we imported explain list here. We render explain list here. So we created explain item and pass the value here. So we need to get rid of it. This we don't need anymore. This one we don't need anymore. So save it. Let's test it. So we found no expenses. So this message showing. So as you can see, this chart bar. So I'm going to explain you how we created this chart bar step by step. And I created chart folder and I spread out two components, chart and chart bar. And the chart bar, as we learned before, I actually output this chart bar dynamically by going through an array of data points and mapping every data point into chart bar. So, and we pass this some data into the chart bar to control how it will be rendered, which kind of data we expect to extract there in the future. So let's say chart bar component should receive value props, and then we want to pass a data point value, and also I want to pass a max property that is currently null, let's say. So that is temporary value, so we're going to change it later. And I want to have a label, for example in this case to have a label of January, February, March and so on. So I also added a key. This key render this list item efficiently. So and therefore I do expect that every data point also have a unique ID. So every chart bar has its own unique label. Therefore I use the label as a unique identifier. In the chart bar component we create like this, we dynamically output props or label so that label is visible. We also need to change this chart bar face div. So this chart bar face CSS class define the background colors for that. This is for background color. One important piece of information is missing in CSS class is height. So overall chart bar has a predefined height 100% of the parent coordinate. Charts had a height of 10 rand. How much we fill that bar depends on the data we are receiving. It depends on the value, because we want to basically fill our chart bar by putting the value enriching with the max value. So if max value for entire chart is 100 and the value for given the chart bar is 50%, we fill that chart bar by 50%. Therefore, we in chart bar component, we now need to calculate by how much this specific chart bar should be filled. For this, we assign a variable. Initially, we set this as 0%. So you can give this name, it's up to you. You can give it any name you want. So if max value is greater than 0, we want to set the buffer height like this, round prox value divided by prox max value times 100%. This basically gives us the percentage between 0 and 100 by which this should be filled. I'm around the nearest integer here. I also want to convert this to a string with a percentage sign in the end. So in the Childbirth field div, we set the style or element dynamically. So now use the chart and the parser and the data point. So I create a new component called expand the chart and the expand folder. So we don't even need the CSS file. And we return the chart in here and we import the chart like this. To set up the data point, the expense chart, I create a new constant here. So this is an array. We have a bunch of objects here because we expect every data point to be an object. And the chart data points, uh, we want to map through the data point, then we can access a value like a label and the values on the given data point. So that's why we want to have a object in here. So this object should be a label and value key. So now value is simply 0, so initially for every data point, but we don't want to have 0 for every data point. Instead, we want to have a look at the filter expenses. So make sure we basically go through all the expenses for the selected years, and then we sum up expenses for every different all the different months. So we assign then here's to our data point. Therefore, I expect to get the filter expenses as a prompt on my expense chart component, because we will use this expense chart and the expense component. We have filter expenses. Uh, here, uh, here in expense chart, I just expect to get the list of expenses. So therefore, we added for loops where we loop through all our expenses via props, and then we wanna have a look at every expense to get the amount of that expense and update the value of appropriate data point by the expense amount. Here we got expense month inside of that loop, expense date, gamma method, day is day object. So we got bin and gamma method which return us that month. So we can use this month to pick a right data point. So January is enter 0 in that array. I reach out the chart data point for the given month. So this start with a 0 and at 11. So I want to update the value of the selected data point by adding plus equal shortcut operator, and I also added expand amount so that we increase the value of a given month by that expand amount. And now we can pass these data points to the chart, and we appointed our updated chart data points, and we also need to calculate this to the max value. We want to have a look at all the months and find the biggest value across all months, because this is a maximum value should be presented in the chart. And to do this, we add a new constant. The name is up to you. Here so we use the max method to find the maximum value, but the max one a number of argument like this and returns the biggest number. So here we have an array, and also not an array of numbers, but an array of objects. Nevertheless, we can work around that. We can get our value array if we call it like this. So here we can simply call props.datapoints.map to call map method. So, but now we will not map data points into the JSX element, but instead so we simply transform them from object to numbers. At the end, we just return a data point dot value. So this means we transform data point objects to numbers, the number store and the data point value. And now it's a data point value where we want to find the maximum. So max one a list of arguments instead of array. This is a string array. So therefore we use spread operator here to pull out all the array elements and add them as a standalone argument. This max method. Now this max method receives two arguments, January, February, March, and so on. So now I pass this to the maxima in here as a max value. And now we just want to make sure in the expense component we imported expense chart from the expense chart, and we render expense chart here. So we pass expenses props in here. So that's why we need to set expenses here and fit the expenses pointer here. That's all for this project.